Brand new notepads are now available in my shop. Look how adorable, and a print set of the adventures of Kit, the Kitty Explorer. Thank you so much for checking it out. Link is in the description. Hi everyone! So in one of my previous videos you saw me starting on this huge painting, and I have it somewhat covered up just so it doesn't spoil too much in case you haven't seen the previous video. I highly recommend you to go watch that first and then come back to this one. Anyway, let's continue on this journey that we have started. Let's finish this painting. Alright, so in the first part you saw me transferring the sketch to this giant canvas and blocking in all the colors. I am in love with this image, two kitties enjoying some Swedish fika, but I wasn't really sure how I wanted to proceed with this painting. I didn't really have a clear vision, so when I left it I wasn't even sure if I wanted to continue. It was looking really flat and I wasn't super inspired, to be perfectly honest, but I can't just leave it like this, so I went back to the sketch and I started playing around with some different colors and texture, and slowly I started to get an idea of what I wanted to do. I felt the inspiration starting to flow. And if you also want to be inspired, let me tell you a little about today's sponsor, Craftsy. Craftsy is your online community and resource of all things creative, where millions of crafters and artists and DIY enthusiasts find inspiration, improve their skills and learn new ones. You find a ton of in-depth and exciting classes on a wide range of subjects like knitting, drawing, baking, writing, painting and photography, and so much more. Learn how to take care of real plants and make a pretty garden, like in this Designing Elegant Edible Garden class, or you can just crochet your own garden that never withers with this really fun class by Amy Gaines. No green thumbs is needed to keep these plants alive, and you will learn how to create a trio of cacti using simple stitches. Perfect if you are a beginner like me. I've always wanted to learn how to crochet. No matter what skill level you're at, I know you will find something that will spark that creativity and inspiration. The instructional videos are taught by talented and friendly experts that walks you through each technique with step-by-step demonstrations. If Craftsy sounds like something that you would like to join, then the first 1000 of you to click the link in the video description will get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49. That's amazing! Thank you so much to Craftsy for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to the painting. I deliberately mixed a lot of paints when doing the color blocking in the previous part so that there would be enough throughout the whole painting. I kept them in airtight containers so they were still nice and fresh to use. I had to mix a couple of new shades and tones, but at least I didn't have to mix any colors from scratch. I think that was one of the more time-consuming parts when doing the base layer, mixing all the different colors and make them somewhat accurate to my sketch. So I'm starting to add highlights and shading and texture to all the different parts, starting with the greens like the chair, flower leaves and sugar bowl. It is kind of like sculpting. I'm shaping and reshaping the shapes of the highlights and shadows, cleaning up the lines. I don't want to blend the colors too much. The style I'm going for, or I'm trying to go for, is more blocky and cartoony. I'm adding a lot of lines and dots to create texture. I'm still not exactly sure about what I'm doing. I'm just adding paint and trying things out until I kind of like it. And again, I like to mention, because I know there will be someone down in the comment that like to lightly complain that I'm not doing things the right or easiest way. I saw your comments on the previous video. I do appreciate tips and tricks though, but not really the harsh, non-asked for critiques. But I am aware that I've been doing this painting process overly complicated. Some of the steps has been unnecessary or way too time consuming. You can check the previous part and you will know what I'm talking about. I have done many acrylic paintings before. I know this medium, but I've never done it in this style. What I've done previously has been in a more realistic style, animal portraits with a lot of blending and stuff. This style in acrylic is completely new to me, so I haven't really figured out yet exactly how to go about this. This is basically just a literally big experiment, and I'm just playing around trying to figure things out. Moving on to the browns, like the cats, the chocolate balls and cinnamon buns, I was contemplating whether I should add some shading to the cats or not, because I wasn't sure how I would do that. So I just added some details, textures and highlights and left it like that. It wasn't until the cinnamon buns really when I finally started to feel more comfortable with this choice of style that I've decided to go with. It is almost like in a lack of better words, a vectorized kind of style with basically no blending, but all the colors and shading and highlights are just shapes, if you understand what I mean. I'm sure there is a name for it. I did do a little bit of blending on some of the bigger color areas though, just to make them a little less flat, but I mainly tried to keep the color block style. Then I got to the tulips and the pinks and purples. I really had a lot of fun playing around with all the different shapes, the highlights, the shading, and this is where I started adding those extra colors as I did in the sketch before. I added purple and pink to the green leaves and more of the dot texture. It isn't really dots, it is more like short lines, but let's call them dots. I really started to like the process and I more and more enjoyed just painting. In the first part, when doing the color blocking, it felt more like a chore, kind of. Doing the groundwork to be able to do all the fun stuff later. Now I could be more creative and I added purples and pinks. I did the shading and highlights on the coffee pot. I might have missed pressing record a few times because I noticed that there are a few jumps in the process on a few things here and there, but I had so many hours of footage anyway, so it might be for the better. Also, the jam in the raspberry cake cookies looks so shiny and delicious. Moving on to the blues, and yes, I'm doing it very methodically, one color at a time. It is just so that I don't have to work with too many colors at a time and risking the paint drying on the palette. It really helps though to spritz some water on the paint every now and then to keep them fresh and moist. On the vase, I did a little more of the blending as I mentioned before to make it look a little less flat. The coffee cup with the blue lines was probably the most tedious part. It has a lot of smaller details and shapes and it was quite fidgety having to paint around all the outlines and cleaning up the paint strokes. Again, it is a little like sculpting, adding, removing, reshaping. I think the cinnamon buns and the raspberry jam cookies are my favorites. I just really like how they look in this style, especially when adding a little bit of extra colors like the pinks and purples. I eventually started adding some yellow and orange dot texture too to all the things. I was really enjoying it, but at this point I was also starting to doubt my decision of adding these colorful textures to everything. When I stopped and took a step back, I couldn't help but thinking that it looked like someone has just splashed a bunch of paints on there. It was starting to look a little too busy. It is a big canvas and I am not used to working in this scale, so all the details are turning out very small. Bigger paint strokes may have been better, but there were no going back now. I once again had to remind myself that this is a practice piece. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm experimenting and gathering information and learning through the process. In my sketch, I made a white grid tablecloth, but when I did the color blocking, I totally forgot adding the grid pattern. I thought that maybe I could add it afterwards, like now, but it just felt like a little too much work adding a bunch of straight lines going across or underneath all the items on the table, so I just skipped the grid pattern, even if I think it would have looked really pretty. I did go over the whole table, adding some shading under the items and cleaning up some of the mishaps and uneven lines. Both on the yellow and the pink background, I did a little more of the blending just to make it look less flat. I also added some white lines to the pink walls behind the cats. It is very simple compared to the rest of the painting, but I tried keeping the backgrounds a little less busy with less colors just to give the eyes somewhere to rest. Now we're at one of my favorite parts in the whole art process, when we get to add all the finishing touches, cleaning up the lines and adding the final details. I mentioned in the previous part that I want the lines to be a little uneven and painted over. I just like the look of that, so I don't want to clean up the lines too much, but on some areas the lines has been painted over completely or just partially in a way so that it looks more messy than intentional. So I went over the whole painting, cleaning up the lines, which helped making the painting looking a tad less busy, I think. It just made the different parts appear a little more clearly. Lastly, I'm adding some pearl sugar to my cinnamon buns and they look so delicious, and some rainbow sprinkles to the chocolate balls. Unfortunately, I don't have a sprinkle song, you have to forgive me. Personally, I like coconut shavings on chocolate balls, but I thought the rainbow sprinkles would help to weigh up all the different colors on the tulips on the opposite side of the painting. I am very happy that I decided to complete this painting, even if it is a little busy and perhaps not for everyone. I think it turned out way better than expected. It is colorful, it is whimsical, it is fun, the cats are so cute, and I love the fika. I have learned a lot when working on this, and I'm so proud of myself that I managed to finish it, even though I had my doubts. I might consider exploring this style even more, but then perhaps in a tad smaller scale. It was truly challenging working in this big format when I'm used to smaller sized paper, and I still have a lot to learn and figure out. Anyway, let me know which part in this painting that's your favorite and what you think of it overall. But yeah, that is all for now. Thanks Craftsy for sponsoring this video, and thank you guys for watching. I will see you next time. Keep painting my happy cats. Bye!